Hello, and welcome to the MMA Mic Drop Podcast. My name is Jade, and I'm joined by the one and only Milo McGregor, who is not only one of the nation's top up-and-coming amateur surfers, but also an emerging MMA analyst. In this episode, we are going to talk about some big fights that were recently announced for UFC 303. Ian Garry versus Michael Venom Page, and then Jamahal Hill's replacement opponent in Carlos Ulberg. I think these are incredible matchups. I mean, particularly the Ian Garry and Michael Venom Page. We'll get into the Jamahal Hill matchup in a moment, but I think this is about as good as a matchup that the UFC could have made. I mean, the matchmakers. I mean, this is incredible. I am like super pumped on this fight. Milo, let me get your general thoughts on Michael Venom Page versus Ian Garry.
I think it's gonna be an insane fight. I don't really know who would win though, because we haven't seen that much from Michael Venom Page against really good guys. But what is he able to do in his last fight? The shows like it's gonna be like a tough fight for either person.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because about 2 months ago I was thinking this would be one of the best matchups I think you can make in the welterweight division when people were talking about Ian Garry versus Colby Covington. I thought that was a terrible idea. I like this fight. Yeah, I like this fight for a multitude of different reasons. One, I mean, they're both strikers. I think that's going to be, a fun fight. But more importantly, they're both. I mean, I think they're both a little bit untested, right? But they're both on the periphery of really breaking through. And we look at Michael Venom Page, the question was, well, how good would he do against a UFC fighter? We saw that against a top 15 fighter.
Yeah.
Completely dominant.
Just dominant, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's another question, well, how good would he be against a top 5 fighter? And then, we don't know yet. And now we look at Ian Garry, and, Ian Garry, has been impressive. He's undefeated. He's 14-0. He, been having small step-ups in competition every step of the way. He, his last fight against Jeff Neal, that was a close fight, but he was able to show, all right, that he belongs in that the upper echelon of the welterweight division. But is he, is he a legit top 5 fighter? How would he do against Jack Della Maddalena? How would he do against Shavkat and so forth? I'm thinking that this test against Michael Venom Page is appropriate. I think it's appropriate for both guys. What are your thoughts on what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I think it's for both the guys. It's going to be a hard fight. It's going to be like a hard test, and we'll see like who's probably going to. They'll probably have after this fight. They'll probably have one more fight to fight for the title. I think.
I think so too, and the reason why I think you're accurate. I mean, one, because Gary's up there in the rankings, but I think Michael Venom Page, he's 37, right? He doesn't have a lot of time. I'm sure the UFC is going to fast track them, and I think this is kind of what they're doing with this fight here. Fast track him. He beats Ian Garry. He's going to get a ton of hype. He'll be one fight away, from the title. I mean, he might even get a title fight after this.
Yeah,
because this is on the.
I can see that.
Yeah. And this is why I think it's such brilliant matchmaking, is because, Michael Venom Page is old, right? He's 37.
Yeah.
If they're able to catch lightning in a bottle, he gets a big win on this massive Conor McGregor card. You're able to easily, particularly if he looks good, easily put him in a title fight, right? You can bypass the Jack Della Maddalena, Shavkat, and so forth, and maybe those two are that they're going to match up against each other at the fight card in Perth. But I think this is perfectly done by the UFC, because if Ian Garry loses, he's only 26. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. He can still rebuild. I mean, it's one loss to a high level fighter. But I think what makes this fight so interesting is I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's where it's really interesting. I really don't. I'm. Is Ian Machado Garry, is he going to try to take Michael Venom Page down? He talks about his grappling game a lot, but we haven't really seen it that much.
Yeah.
See.
But I don't really know if you try to take him down. I think it's probably going to be a strike off. Because I think
a strike.
I'm sure.
Is that new terminology?
Yeah.
A strike off.
Yeah, I invented it.
There you go. Congratulations.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a strike off.
A strike off.
I don't really. Yeah.
Well,
for sure.
Yeah, both those guys fight at range so well. And
Yeah.
so I'm
And Michael Venom Page is so like unorthodox.
yeah,
So he's so random.
and he's super tricky. So I'm really curious about this fight. So I think this takes the UFC 303 fight card to a whole different level, adding this as the featured bout, because
Yeah.
in the co-main, we had Khalil Roundtree, had to pull out, but or I think it had something to do with banned substance, and so he was no longer able to fight. And then you bring in Carlos Ulberg, and I think this is another smart move by the UFC matchmakers. I really like how they take somebody who's pretty young in his UFC career, but has again progressively stepped up. He's 6-0 in his last 6 fights, all by finish. But he's a little older too. He's not as old as Michael Venom Page. He is 33. And so is Jamahal Hill, and he hits hard. And he has that kickboxing pedigree. Um, you know, um, Without thinking about it,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm giving the edge to Jamahal Hill in this fight, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is a good matchup. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'd give the edge to Jamahal Hill, but after his last fight, he just got like kind of exposed. I don't know. Just got destroyed like that. It could ruin his confidence.
Well,
But
I mean,
yeah,
I don't know if he got exposed. I mean, he got one shot by Alex Pereira. I mean,
Pereira, yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that being exposed, right? I mean, Pereira's, probably the hardest hitter in the UFC, definitely in his division.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
And he hit him once, he knocked him out, but yeah, I
Uh
mean, we'll see. And Ulberg, what I like about this, similar to the Ian Garry Michael Venom Page matchup, is a big win for any of these guys can catapult them into stardom, right? I mean, Ian Garry has a lot of brand value, but nobody really likes him, right? And
yeah.
where this does give him an opportunity against a high level fighter against like a Michael Venom Page to get a big win if he does so impressively on a Conor McGregor card, because I doubt he's going to be. I think the crowd is going to be mixed with him because you're going to have a lot of Irish fans in attendance to support Conor, and they're probably therefore going to support Ian Garry. So this is probably the biggest
Yeah.
stage on which he can do something big. And then Carlos Ulberg, he's on a gigantic stage. He takes his name from almost obscurity, and and that's maybe that word's maybe a little too harsh, but in terms of what the casual fans know, and to really catapult himself into stardom. And then if Jamahal Hill gets a big win, it's to remind everybody, oh yeah, it's Jamahal Hill. He's right.
He's good.
He's a title contender. So absolutely brilliant matchmaking.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Now, typically we go into, or do you have any other thoughts on that fight, or the Michael Venom Page fight?
No, I think there's both really good fights, and yeah.
Yeah. Does this make you more excited about the UFC 303 card, or were you already pumped on it?
Yeah, no, it makes me a lot more excited because I was really only interested in the Conor McGregor fight, but now I'm gonna watch Ian Garry and the Jamahal Hill fight for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think it does add a lot. And there's some pretty good prelims, but I think it does take this card to an entire
Yeah,
level. Now, if you watched our shows before, typically we have a Kicking It with Milo and a Cook of the Week. In these shorter videos, we're probably not going to do that as much. We're going to probably save those segments for our previews, our preview shows. But
yeah.
please subscribe, like, and comment below. Milo, do you have a last word?
Drop the mic.
We're out.